session's moderator. Ms. Marta Perez Cuso is a development policy analyst and practitioner specialized in providing advice on science and technology and innovation policies for development. She works with the UNESCAP and currently interested in inclusive innovation policies, social enterprises, and impact investment. And of course, public sector innovation and frontier technologies and 2030 agendas. So, so we welcome Marta Perez Cuso. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. You can see from my back screen that I'm working with ESCAP and the UN, and together with Jonathan, we share the same backdrop. It's a great pleasure to moderate the Plenary 5 dialogue among multilateral agencies and international organizations. In this plenary, we will be focusing on what's the role of us, of those of us working in international agencies and in supporting ecosystems for social entrepreneurship and social innovation, and how we can support and encourage cross-sectoral collaboration to ensure that we have a more inclusive future and that we build back better. So today we will be discussing with a number of colleagues, and we will also explore what each of us contribute to each of the, can contribute to the different 5 multi-stakeholder platforms that have been suggested in this conference. Just to recall, those 5 multi-stakeholder platforms focus around one on women's empowerment, livelihoods, and food in agricultural value chains. The second one on decent work for all. The third one on health for all. The third focuses on rural revitalization, youth, and social entrepreneurship. And the fifth focuses on technological innovations for sustainable development. And as Jonathan has already spoken long and on what's the role of ESCAP in the previous session, I will just say that we've been working closely with governments, supporting and accompanying them and learning from their efforts in promoting more enabling environments for social enterprises. And we do so through analytical studies, through advisory services, and through promoting partnerships. But I will rather focus now on the work of other international agencies. So I would like to welcome and introduce you to the 4 panelists that we will have in this session. We have Ranathuga, who is the project coordinator with Youth Collab, which is the regional youth project of UNDP in Asia Pacific, and which focuses on empowering youth to create SDG solutions through social innovation and entrepreneurship. Savi is born in Sri Lanka, but is currently based in Bangkok, like myself. We also have Mesina. She is the UN Women Philippines Program Manager for WeEmpowerAsia, which is a program promoting women's economic empowerment through private sector engagement, entrepreneurship, and the adoption of women's empowerment principles at various levels. We also have Kelvin Surgeon, who is joining us from Delhi. He's a sustainable enterprise development for South Asia with the International Labour Organization, where he provides technical advisory services to 7 countries in South Asia, including Afghanistan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And finally, we also have Shivani. She's the sector lead on responsible agricultural supply chains and implementation, and responsible for the implementation of the OECD FAO guidelines on responsible agricultural supply chains. And Shivani provides technical advice to policymakers and practitioners on integrating due diligence into policies and standards. So with this very brief introduction of the panelists, I would like to start our conversation. But before I put the first question to our panelists, I will like to ask our audience to share with us through the chat, what do you think is the role that international organizations and multilateral agencies have in encouraging social entrepreneurship and social innovation? So if you can share your thoughts on the chat, that will be much welcome. And while you do so, I will put the first question to our panelists, which will be about, if you can please share with us what's the work that your organization does in supporting social entrepreneurship and social innovation. So let me start with Savi from Youth Collab UNDP. Savi, over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Marta. And then good morning, afternoon, evening to all of you. And really pleasure to be joining with you with these great conversations. I think heard a lot from the 2 days of the discussion so far. I heard a little bit from what Jonathan has been saying about the program, and it's really a pleasure to be here, both from the program and the institution I represent, but also as a young social entrepreneur myself, who has been leading this journey in both Sri Lanka, in Vietnam, Thailand in the past. Which has also helped me to create this journey of supporting social entrepreneurship ecosystem. So a little bit about the work that as an organization we provide. So I represent United Nations Development Program, the Asia Pacific Regional Bureau. So in globally, we are present in over 170 countries, really focusing on elevating poverty and addressing inequalities and inclusiveness. And then in this region, we are present in 36 countries to 24 offices, Southeast Asia, East Asia, Pacific, and then also in the South Asia as well. And then we are having a large engagement, especially on building resilience and inclusive growth and creating opportunities for productive governance and engagement, effective governance as well. So, and then moving into what sort of opportunities that we provide, especially on the social entrepreneurship ecosystem in the region. So the journey-wise, it has been taken a few years back, and about in 2016, soon after the SDG agenda came into shape, where all of you are great programming specialists on this agenda. So the role of young people came into as a key picture, because this region in Asia Pacific, we have over 660 million young people from 15 to 24 years old. However, they also face challenges in terms of even pre-COVID on not in education, employment, training, almost 1/4 of this group. However, there's also stories in Japan, Korea, China in the past as well, where young people have been one of the key drivers of the economic engine in the past of the successes. So with these sort of challenges, opportunities coming into place, and then SDGs as a backdrop, so we thought about what are the ways of engaging them to provide the support to the governments on accelerating the achievement of SDG agenda. So we realized that youth social entrepreneurship, leadership, and innovation can play a key role to invest and empower young people in this agenda. So that created the journey of Youth Collab, which is co-led by UNDP and City Foundation for the last 3 years. In terms of what we provide in a nutshell, we can go more into the details and discussions later, but at least as a nutshell, we provide on a 3-pronged approach support for the young people, young innovators across this region. So the number one is as a young individual, if they are keen on this agenda and want to develop their capacities and become a social entrepreneur, what are the challenges that they face, and then how we can help them to overcome them, especially looking at reducing the failure, because data also shows that over 80 to 90% of these young entrepreneurs face challenges in their first couple of years or in their journey, and maybe even reduced to failure. So how these challenges can be overcome through effective support, through a multilateral sort of a convening approach we can take. So what we provide is from the skill development, training and capacity and knowledge, into, of course, into boot camps, hackathons, and the most important one is what comes after. It's actually about mentoring, hand-holding them, incubation, acceleration, and helping them around 3-year journey, which actually help them to transform their ideas and solution, because SDG solutions, into productive employment opportunities and creating sustainable solutions to their communities. So that's one side of the approach we provide. The second is, we also know that as a convener, integrator, as a development agency, it is we are not the best player of addressing this issue, and then we are also not the only player as well. So that's why we believe in this kind of a platform, like working with all of you collaboratively on how we can address this ecosystem together. So we call the midstream approach in terms of working with the partnerships. So we work with governments, incubators, accelerators, research agencies. I was just scrolling down some of the names. I saw Angels of Impact and many other partners in the call as well, TSIP from the CSIP from Vietnam. So many of the such kind of partners, we work together in terms of developing their capacity, but also learning and bridging the gaps between governments and local partners as well. So this is the one approach. And the last approach is very much aligning to what Jonathan mentioned on UNESCAP side as well, on the engaged mainstreaming of the policies and regulations and upstream activities over there. So we also work very closely with UNESCAP and many partners in terms of mainstreaming these youth focused entrepreneurship development policies in many countries on systemic approaches and so on and so forth. So these are the three levels of support we provide. Yeah, we can go to more discussions in the future, but this is the support we provide for the social entrepreneurship ecosystem in this region. So far, for the last 3 years, we are fortunate that we are in almost 28 countries in this region, so which is very spread through in many countries, so that's great. And then we have a cohort of about 650 young innovators so far who are actually addressing SDG solutions. So these are some of the couple of highlights, but yeah, happy to discuss more. Over to you, Marta.
Thanks a lot, Savi, and for all the energy that Youth Collab is infusing in young generations on promoting innovation for the SDGs and social entrepreneurship. Let me now move on to Lanlan from UN Women Philippines. Lanlan.
Thank you, Marta. I just saw a comment in the chat box from WLB saying that it's very important for IAS to support an ecosystem for social entrepreneurship because it could empower women in the communities. And at the moment, UN Women is very happy to share that through WeEmpowerAsia program. It's a program supported by the EU. Setting up, it intends to set up enabling environment for women to lead and thrive in workplace and businesses. It is at the regional level adopted in 7 countries in Asia Pacific, namely the Philippines, China, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. We try to achieve this through 3 pillars or approaches, as also Savi mentioned earlier. First is really promoting an enabling environment for women to thrive, and this includes an opportunity to review policies, whether that's workplace policies or policies linked to businesses that is challenging or blocking women's participation in the workplace and in enterprises. Second is promoting gender-responsive entrepreneurship. We know that a lot of businesses, especially at the MSME level here in the Philippines, and I think as well in Asia Pacific, is represented majority by women. And we know that there's a lot of things that we could support and work towards making sure they thrive and they grow. And third is private sector engagement. Why is private sector engagement involved in this? Because we feel that private sector could also be a big market for the entrepreneurs, the women-led and women-owned enterprises. And if the private sectors are also made aware about the different opportunities that they could extend to the women-led and owned enterprises, it could really promote businesses and grow their businesses. All of these areas is really towards promoting and adopting the 7 women's empowerment principles on leadership, commitment to gender equality in the workplace, employee health, well-being and safety, education and training for all, especially for women, enterprise and supply chain development and marketing practices, community advocacy and engagement, because we know and we see that it's very important for us to understand not just the bottom line on how it could grow a business, but how it could also impact the communities where they operate and the communities that come together to produce the different goods. And last is also promoting measurement and reporting about the gains of these initiatives. While the program we have at the WeEmpowerAsia does not solely focus on social entrepreneurship, we know and we believe that this supports the 3 platforms in the 5 multi-sectoral platforms that the CELS is promoting, which is the women's empowerment, livelihoods, and food in agricultural value chains, decent work for all in sustainable value chains, and health for all. These 3 areas we believe is something that is very core to the work and the program of WeEmpowerAsia, because it hopes to really continuously promote and recognize the different contribution that women could make, whether that's in the workplace or in the businesses. And we hope to continuously work with different stakeholders and partners to make sure that the different challenges for women to participate in these spaces is also addressed. I'd leave it at that and looking forward to different discussions and questions later. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you, Len. Thanks very much for sharing the gender dimension in entrepreneurship in general, but specifically also in social entrepreneurship. Let's now give the opportunity to Kelvin to share with us what the ILO, how the ILO supports social entrepreneurship. Kelvin, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. And thank you, Marta, for introducing me. And I think, you know, the ILO, International Labour Organization, is no stranger to all of us. You know, it's the only specialized tripartite agency of the United Nations. And I think we should know that since 1920, we have a specialized unit in the ILO that speaks to and responds to the demands of our constituents to provide research, policy support, capacity strengthening on cooperatives and social and entrepreneurship, social and solidarity economy, and all of these kinds of issues. So we've worked tremendously over the years in countries all over the world, in Asia, in Africa, in the Pacific, on women's issues, you know, domestic workers, you know, digitalization of women in agriculture. And we have a number of projects and whatnot throughout the region, all over the world, that we've been working very closely with social and solidarity economy organizations. We recently conducted 2 global research which showed that social and solidarity economy and social enterprises research in 20 countries target job creation, transition to formality, sustainable entrepreneurship, social welfare, and the promotion of local development. Very importantly, our work on cooperatives, the ILO that is, has been guided by an ILO standard. As you know, the ILO, we're about standards and recommendations, and we actually have an ILO standard, recommendation on the promotion of cooperatives, number 193, which clearly lays out the role of cooperatives and social and solidarity economy in the world, what are the duties and responsibilities of stakeholders, the government, private sector, and inside of that, of course, would be issues of decent work. In the ILO, you know, we very much gung-ho on decent work and rights at work, and all of these kinds of issues you will find in that recommendations. There is now a call at the United Nations for a resolution, very importantly, on social and solidarity economy. Now this is very, very important. So you're going to have a large, long discussion coming up very soon. And even in the ILO, we've put it on the agenda, you know, at our global level and our leadership level to talk about social and solidarity economy. Okay, we have adopted guidelines on statistics, very importantly. In 2018, very, very importantly, we need to know, for example, about the social and solidarity economy. What have they been doing in terms of membership, in terms of drive, in terms of innovation? So lots of statistics have been collected over the years. Recently, as well, linking it to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, 17 briefs for each of the SDGs have been put out, treating with all the issues and so on for social enterprises. The report on the Global Commission on the Future of Work, for example, calls for opportunities to create jobs, innovations, and the reshaping of business incentives towards well-being, environment, sustainability, and equality. All very, very important for social enterprises. And you may have also known that recently there's the United Nations COVID Response and Recovery Fund. All right, and that fund, for example, lots of proposals have come out in India, in South Asia, for example, working closely with the United Nations, you know, and social and solidarity economy in pushing the agenda of the SDGs through the UN Multi-Donor Trust Fund. So that, for example, in India, we talked about, there was a proposal in innovative financing for promoting innovations in rural women in agriculture. And there were other proposals in other countries in innovations and in financing and whatnot to treat with the whole question of, you know, the role of sustainability and social enterprises in all of that. So I think that in terms of the ILO and in specifically and in general, you know, the United Nations, for example, we see our role as very critical in supporting social entrepreneurship and social innovations. We also link it, of course, to our work that we've been doing on the private sector, the whole SMEs, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And we have a lot of work that we've been doing there in terms of projects and programs and tools as well. We have a lot of tools, for example, in cooperatives, training tools, training programs and whatnot, designed to capacitate social and solidarity economy. For example, one tool we have is My Cooperative. We also have tools that looks at financial and financial architecture for social and solidarity economy. And we also have a number of other programs that teaches one all about social enterprises, how to start it, how to grow it, regulations, governance, all of these are critical issues as it relates to social entrepreneurship and social enterprises. So, you know, the point is that the support is there. We see it as very important and critical, and that support we expect to continue. And what we've done recently as well is we've done a lot of repurposing all our projects and our tools and whatnot to treat with the issue of COVID, given the impact that COVID have had, you know, on a number of countries all over the world. I think I'll stop there for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelvin, and thank you for stressing on the importance of the legal and regulatory environment for encouraging social and solidarity economy, and the importance of statistics to guide on our work moving forward, and to recognize the economic importance and the social importance of social enterprises. Thanks very much for those points. Let me now turn to Shivani from the OECD, our last speaker. Shivani, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marta. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. It's very early here in Paris. It's just after 6 a.m. So apologies if I'm not fully awake. Look, the OECD, I don't know if many of you are familiar with the OECD. It's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's not a UN agency, so we're talking about 38 countries who are member countries. But these are, you know, primarily, I guess, if you read the Financial Times, it's often referred to as the development country club, if you will. Yeah. But we've really been involved with and very active in the area of social entrepreneurship really since, I would say, the 90s. And our focus tends to be really on developing tools and assessments that can help countries, policymakers, really understand what is it that makes good policy with regards to social entrepreneurship. So we've done a number of social entrepreneurship in-depth country reviews, which really I think could also be developed in the ASEAN region as well. And also we've created a better entrepreneurship policy tool, which is a free online tool. And I will share after this panel with everyone the website, because I think it's on us as international organizations to really, you know, put out tools that can be used for the broader public. And that's what OECD we are really trying to do. And this online tool is really a self-assessment for policymakers, so they can see, like, look, using their policies on a number of indicators, assess where it's strong, where it's weak, and, you know, improve. So that's on the social entrepreneurship side. But I also want to highlight, and that's the work that I'm, of course, more familiar with and I'm very involved in, is our work on responsible business conduct. So just broadly on responsible business. And here we've been working on this area, particularly to promote positive impact, but also to really address some of the negative impacts that can happen in value chains. And the work in that area has been ongoing at the OECD since the late 70s. What's most interesting, I think, and where I think now we're finally getting to an area where it's much more practical, is working directly with the private sector. So at the OECD, even though our primary membership are the countries, so that's, we talk to governments a lot, we also are what our Secretary General says, a can-do organization. So not just a think organization, but a doing organization. And in the doing part, we actually have a number of programs working directly with the private sector, with enterprises along the entire value chain of different sizes, who are intent on actually promoting and reaching this social aspect, addressing the broad range of social commitments that we have. And of course, all of our guidances and standards are very much aligned to colleagues, for example, from the UN. So the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, ILO standards, the ILO is the international agency on labor. So we're not reinventing anything. What we're trying to do is bring it together. So I guess, Marta, I'll leave it at that and just sort of keep in mind for us, it's, we have almost two paths. On the social entrepreneurship side, it's a lot of the work is targeted, I would say, to the policymakers side, which is a very important role, because you need policymakers to make better policies, because if not, it doesn't trickle down to the economy. And then on the responsible business side, we work both with the policymakers, but also directly with businesses through a range of implementation programs. So that's how I heard about and was invited to this conference, thanks to IC, whom we've been in touch with, because we have programs in the region, in the Philippines, for example, but also in a number of other Southeast Asian countries. And just a word on, I think the agricultural sector is one in which you really, almost all the SDGs are affected when you look at the agricultural sector. And that's some area that I think there's a lot more that can be done, because we also know that women play a leading role in that. And increasingly in social entrepreneurship, you're seeing some extremely innovative ideas coming up, particularly from the Southeast Asia region. Okay, I'm going to stop there and turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you for introducing, in a nutshell, the work that the OECD does at the policy level, and now also engaging with the private sector. I think this gives us an overview of the wealth and variety of support that international agencies can provide to encourage enabling environments for social entrepreneurs. And also based on the chat and the questions coming up, there are multiple avenues to support social entrepreneurs, from enabling regulatory environments to funding programs, to setting up instruments, to encouraging hackathons and mentorship programs for social entrepreneurs, and to encourage also enabling policy environments. Policies are not the doers, but are the enablers, and may set the vision of a future where social entrepreneurs will be able to operate and grow. And I think this also summarizes the feeling coming from the chat. Before I move to the second question, for our audience, please feel free to continue asking questions directly to our speakers. I've seen some wonderful interactions on the chat. Feel free to continue asking questions directly or open questions to our speakers. Now, on the second half of our discussion, I would like to focus a bit more on the current context of COVID-19 that we are facing, the multiple social and economic challenges that COVID has put on us, and that has also put on social entrepreneurs. And as I was sharing a recent study of survey of social entrepreneurs in the Philippines, over 60% of social entrepreneurs interviewed have been affected. The revenues have been affected, and half, at least by half. That's an amazing, challenging impact, not just for those social entrepreneurs, but also for those that benefit from the services of social entrepreneurs. And we've heard stories of how some social enterprises have made efforts to continue delivering and to continue to operate in this challenging context, to make adjustments, to continue to pay salaries to their staff, even if lower salaries, to shift their business, to produce masks, for example, to deliver online. And many have been affected and have suffered. A few have been able to pivot their business models. So the question now is how us as international agencies can build back better and support social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship that will be more resilient and that will have an even greater social impact. And I think that the initiative put forward by ISEA in focusing in 5 core issues, it's very welcome, because it will, it's one mechanism to support collaboration and synergies in our different efforts, and also to focus on what are core areas for social impact. So my second question now for the panelists will be, how do you see your organization could support building back better and build more resilient social enterprises that have a greater social impact through any of those 5 multi-stakeholder platforms put forward in this conference? So I will follow the same order, and I will ask first Savi to respond.
Great, thanks a lot. I think a lot of conversations are taking place. I mean, we are addressing some of them in the chat already. I just shared our COVID-19 response so that I can keep it to a summary, and then we can have more discussions as well. So in a nutshell, yes, it's a very important, the current shift that we are right now, especially with the COVID-19 impact, but also not only the pandemic itself, but are the interlinkages in terms of the social dimensions of it, and then the connection with its own climate impact. And so there are many challenging agendas and priorities that are taking shape right now. And then it's really great to see SEAL has together placed these 5 priority areas to follow up as well. So I think good to see the youth being reflected. I think that is great. So I think traditionally, I think UNDP, UN Socio-Economic Recovery has a larger framework. I don't want to go to detail. I'm pretty sure you have had many approaches on it. But really adding the value on the green recovery and in terms of the resilience side is one of the key focuses of UNDP as well, especially on social protection, governance, digital disruption. These are some of the key, the 4 pillars of the UNDP's overall response to the COVID-19 challenge over there. So especially moving into our aspect on youth collab. So addressing some of the questions that came as well, which is larger, but also connected to COVID-19. So I think we still have the same 3-pronged approach, even addressing the COVID-19 impact. So especially for young people, I think we have seen, we did our own survey as well. You can see the blog space coming from that research. We had over 86% of our respondents responding that they had some sort of impact on their business, and almost 1/3 of them has some sort of even period of closure, or even some business model to be completely changed as well, especially for the people in tourism sector, etc. So how we can provide them with the simple things as mental health, and there were a lot of discussion about how we can help knowledge exchange and creating those partnerships. So we have been really engaging them through a platform called Springboard, which is actually a youth pre-incubator, which is virtual, digital, free for any youth startup or any startup in that sense, to go through the challenges, which are the content is delivered by the young entrepreneurs themselves. who has gone through challenges, so they can have a opportunity to connect with each other. So that has been one approach we have been really strengthening up throughout the COVID period. And second is, of course, working with the partners. I saw a really good question about from Santoshi as well, regarding some of the challenges that we have as development agencies working with the private sector of some of our procurement protocols, etc., etc. We are now trying new models, especially working with UNCDF, the United Nations Capital Development Fund, to create a joint youth social innovation facility, like a fund and a facility where we really try to target some of the private sector, youth social entrepreneurs themselves to receive funding, and then also look into new models of accessing funding for these COVID challenges like crowdfunding. So we are now having some pilots and some successes in various countries, attracting crowdfunding and other support for young entrepreneurs through the platform that we can curate. And last but not least, on the policymaking side, we are also addressing systematic approaches to the policymaking on the youth employment challenges of COVID. So we had the first report coming for Bhutan, I think a couple of weeks back. So these are some of the, because these are like a multi-ministerial challenge, because we cannot just say the young youth empowerment is Ministry of Youth. It's actually multiple of ministries. So how we can actually, as a systems issue, rather than just a one linear approach. So these are some of the activities we do. So definitely, I think in the thematic area of the rural revitalization, this is a priority. So you can even see our startup cohort who are addressing it. So we provide these solutions to the startups and cohort, and who can provide solutions. We have startups who are providing mental health support and access to products and services, and also creating the PPE. Even in Philippines, Bangladesh, and many other countries, and even Timor-Leste, the first PPE locally produced were made by some of the young entrepreneurs. So these are the stories we are seeing, and hope that we can, and the challenges and the economic impact will be lasting for some period in the future. So we hope that we can work collectively addressing these challenges to these the groups as well. And then specifically just addressing the last part on the technology side, I saw the technology innovation and sustainable development. I think especially working with the cohort of young people, they are very keen on technology use for social good, tech for good. So I think some of our larger platform in Bangladesh providing rural agriculture support, on providing innovative financing challenge for my farmer, providing inclusive technology. DevTalk in Pakistan, who is actually providing that opportunity to engage the people with disability. In Samoa, they're using for mental health. So I think technology usage for young people has been also an interesting leverage that we are seeing, especially with the COVID. Now we are in the technology phase where we are seeing a complete difference as well. So yeah, these are some of the offers we have, and happy to answer some questions in the chat as well. Over to you, Marta.
Thank you, Savi. Thank you very much for highlighting the different levels of intervention from policy to moving into virtual environments to be able to keep on the operations. Let me move on to Len.
Yes, thank you, Marta. From the start of the pandemic, we know that women would definitely bear the brunt of the socioeconomic impacts of COVID-19. That's why I would say, have been really calling on for a very gender inclusive and responsive way of tackling the issue, from response and recovery planning to building back better situations and opportunities. This has been made very consistent as we called upon different stakeholders and CSO partners to initially assess what could be the impact, or what could be the economic impact of COVID to women enterprises, women entrepreneurs, and to the community. And we've heard a lot of concerns, we've heard a lot of issues, and we have seen how it could be linked to the work we're doing at WeEmpowerAsia. So through this, we made really a very consistent call in different spaces in trying to highlight how we need to make sure that as we build and plan for recovery and really hope to set up resilient organizations, resilient businesses, it has to be gender inclusive. And because women's role and women's contribution cannot be denied anymore, especially at this time, I see the value of organizations, especially the UN, in trying to host and convene these discussions. And I feel that agencies like the UN Women and other UN offices could really remind everyone what framework we need to adapt to make sure that we are not leaving anyone behind. This multi-stakeholder engagement could really be from, consultation to brainstorming to planning to setting up agreements between and among stakeholders, how we could come together and make sure we build back and we are able to bounce back better. I attended one of the ministerial meeting with different finance ministers, and the call of the UN is really to, use the opportunity in this crisis to make sure that all of the different things that we think are not working anymore is something that we could reflect on and build upon better situation. And we hope that that could really include making sure we make women count. So at the level of the UN Women and We Empower Asia, we've done that. So we've done and we've extended different discussion series on women rights above COVID in partnership with different groups and organizations, supporting women entrepreneurs and partners. We have also tried to really be consistent and remind big businesses and companies how gender inclusive business recovery planning is very important. That's why we ask and call out partners in the private sector to be very mindful about their value chains or their supply chains, and how, the sudden stop or the sudden cash flow management from their end would definitely have a negative impact in the communities that are supplying the goods and the materials or the ingredients for whatever it is that they are producing. So we want to really convey that message and make sure they are aware of that and aware that they could also extend support by, cautioning the sudden stoppage or, the lessening of supplies trying to be accessed through these communities. We have also, I heard Savi mentioned earlier, the adoption of technology and innovation. We know that a lot of women entrepreneurs, especially those who are very much in the offline business world, are struggling how to transition, because we know the new normal now calls for adapting this technology and putting it on an online platform. So we have really tried to promote and provide training and information sessions on how these women entrepreneurs could transition their offline businesses to an online platform through a partner called Connected Women. And we are seeing a lot of, different engagements and different learnings from that. Also included is the training opportunity, that could be made available and that could be accessed because of the increasing digitalization of the workforce. So data labeling, machine learning, AI training. So we are also looking into supporting more of those areas. Lastly is really trying to review and propose policies that could support and sustain local enterprises, because we know the local enterprises play a very, very big role at the moment, especially during this time. And these local enterprises supports communities. And in these communities, you would see a lot of women who cannot leave their families or their children behind, so they intend to just stay within the area where they can work and where they can contribute productively. So we really hope that this could continue and really make sure that there's a win-win situation between the consumers, the producers, and the entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. I am very happy to really see that a lot of the different entrepreneurs we have known since the program started are pivoting to an online platform. But outside setting up the online platform, is there opportunity given to really access and reach out to the different suppliers and producers from different places who does not have the brand or who are not very known to be producing very good items and produce, and sharing their platform and sharing their brand so that they could also have the opportunity to increase their distribution channel and sales as well. So we hope to see a lot of this moving forward, and we really hope that we could find the best way possible to continuously support local enterprises and social enterprises in this area. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lenlen. In interest of time, let me move on quickly to Kelvin.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think the ILO's work in terms of our policy, in terms of our projects, in terms of the very set of actions that we've taken have all been designed to treat with, building back better. For example, the ILO's policy framework in response to the pandemic includes 4 pillars. 1, stimulating the economy and employment. 2, supporting enterprises, jobs and incomes. 3, protecting workers in the workplace. And 4, relying on social dialogue for resolution. So that these 4 pillars contains critical elements to build back better, to ensure that there's a fairer system, one that is sustainable, resilient, and ensures what we call inclusive labor markets going forward in the future. I think that the ILO as a UN agency, we do have convening power and the importance of social dialogue, so that what we've been doing since the start of the COVID is we have engaged our constituents, our workers, our employers, the private sector, governments. We have really engaged them a lot in terms of COVID response, giving technical assistance, giving advice. We've hosted a tremendous amounts of webinars because we can't have face-to-face, so that we've hosted tremendous amounts of webinars on all number of issues, social protection, MSMEs, women entrepreneurship development. And all of our training programs and tools have been repurposed for an online environment. For example, our Get Ahead, which is a tool designed for women and women entrepreneurs. Our Start and Improve Your Business program, our productivity tools, our tools on cooperatives have all been designed and repurposed for an online environment. I think too that even our projects, for example, our Japan-funded project towards fair and sustainable global supply chains, protecting decent work for workers in South Asia, that project has also been redesigned to treat with COVID. As we would have realized and as we've all seen, the invisible workers have been seriously affected by COVID. And who are these invisible workers? The domestic workers, the informal workers. And throughout South Asia, the level of informality is very high. In India, for example, over 90% of the labor force and the workforce is is informal workers, not to mention other South Asian countries. And this happens, I think, a lot in Asia. So that these invisible workers, we have seen the treatment of some of them in terms of the hours of work, in terms of conditions of work, which, if we are not careful, we can go way back from a lot of gains that we have made in the past. So it's very important in terms of the fundamental principles and rights at work. These rights are very important, and we in the ILO, we've been talking about it, we've been having discussions and ensuring that, these things, these important principles and laws, the labor laws and whatnot, are not forgotten, given the impact that COVID have had. Businesses have closed, tremendous losses, and therefore people have been seriously imploded and affected, and we need to take that into consideration. So I think in terms of the collaborative platforms, therefore, the issue of health for all and our work on social protection, taking care of the vulnerable, in the society, ensuring that people there's some kind of response, not only now, but as we try to build back better for the future, we need better social protection systems going forward for everybody, the social sector, the social and solidarity economy, we need better social protection systems. All right, our work, decent work for all, in sustainable value chain, supply chains, all our work have been centered. We've done a lot of work, a lot of advice, a lot of documents and whatnot we've put out in respect of decent work, very, very importantly for us, okay? And rural revitalization, youth and social entrepreneurship. We've also done a lot of work treating with the rural sector. We've been working, for example, with a large social organization, CWA, that you might know, talking about a livelihood recovery fund for workers in agriculture affected by crisis. And COVID-19 is one of those crises that we need to look at. So how do they return to livelihood? Given the fact that when you have these kinds of crises, they are so affected that their very essence of their livelihood is affected. How can we get them to return to livelihood? So the issue of a livelihood recovery fund is under discussion. You know, we're doing a lot of work with young people and social entrepreneurs, young people coming out of school. Tremendous amount of young people in universities coming out of school, cannot find jobs. There are no jobs for them. How do we get them to be innovative and to be creative? So we're talking about skills training, skills development, mentorship, okay? All of these kinds of issues, okay, needs to be put into the mix then, you know, as we try to treat with the pandemic, as we try to build back better. And finally, or I should say, the second to last point, the issue of just transition. Again, given the impact of the pandemic, we need to talk about, there will be changes in the society, jobs will be lost, but how do we ensure that the transitions that take place are just and equitable? And therefore in the ILO, we've been calling for people-centered policies that puts people at the heart of all that we do in terms of jobs, rights at work, policies for poverty reduction, and these kinds of issues. And this is really the heart of the ILO's centenary initiative, which we have put in action now, this centenary initiative, which will guide the work and the future of the ILO in the next coming decades. So I'll stop there on those points. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kelvin, and for pointing on the points of, we have to think now how we want to, what's the future that we want, and how we will be building back better. We're not just building as it was before, but it's time to rethink what's the future that we want. Let me move to Shivani, our last speaker for the second round.
Yeah, thank you, Marta. I'll keep it pretty brief and short because I see that we're closing up on the time. But look, the COVID crisis has really, it's hit almost all levels of society, all countries globally. So this is really unprecedented. And the OECD, when it was clear how broad and wide-reaching through society across countries this is going to be, and we're not out of it by any stretch. Yeah? Our SG really essentially just made a call, and I kid you not, all of us across the OECD have been really focused, thinking how do we move and deal with this? And there are short-term issues, longer-term issues. For OECD, one of our hallmarks is data. And so I shared a link with folks, and I would encourage you to look at that, because there you get quality data. In order to make decisions, especially at the policy level, you actually need data. And we've ILO on the job data, for example, these are all things that we integrate into. Super important, because what you don't want is to make some half-baked policy, right? I mean, you really need to think it through. But it's very uncertain. I think that's the one thing. The other thing that I think has really been a wake-up call, and I mean, it's not a wake-up call for like the work that I do, because that's some of the stuff that we're always talking about, being sustainable, being responsible, being inclusive, thinking through how business decisions affect marginalized groups. But I must say that in some ways, the COVID crisis has really been a catalyst, I would say, for groups that may not necessarily think this way, to then take it seriously and say, like, okay, it's not just about untrammeled economic growth, and this is a big deal from, because you need to get different stakeholders to move in a particular direction. And now we're seeing, investors, for example, asking these sort of harder questions, like, look, in your risk management, what are you looking at? Environmental impacts, social impacts, health impacts. But again, at the first basis, we are still in the short-term crisis of impacts on workers, on very marginalized, so the youth and women, and then just the sheer magnitude of on the economic impact. I mean, you can see across all countries, there's massive job losses across a wide range of sectors. And as I said, we're still not out of it. I mean, I think all of you probably see the numbers in Europe, and frankly, it's quite, disquieting. Also, parts of Asia, parts of Latin America. So we're still we're still there. I just would encourage folks to look at that site that I provided. Two topics that probably are most interest to this audience. There's a number of papers on social enterprises and sort of the role that social enterprises can play and have played both during the pandemic, but also post. So that I think is quite nice to see. And then the paper on responsible business conduct and COVID-19, and sort of looking both again at the short term, but also the long term opportunities to really embed this sort of thinking into business models and policy responses. So I'm going to stop there and turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shivani, for really highlighting the sheer impact of COVID-19 and how we must all rethink our current areas of work and try to move together. I think that's the difficulty. And I see that in terms of social entrepreneurship, women entrepreneurs and impact investment, there is now a very good base to move forward. A lot of different actors at the national, international, regional level, from policymakers to international agencies, businesses, investors, are conscious of this and moving. And now it's maybe, is it the right time to move it into, for example, mainstream businesses and work with them in thinking more on the social impact. We are almost out of time, and I think that the conversations in the chat have been great, and there's been a wealth of resources shared. So Gomer, I really hope that you will keep good track of all those resources and insights shared. There was a question, and going back to this of building enabling environments for social entrepreneurs. We are conscious that there are multiple elements. You need policies, you need regulatory legal frameworks, you need the entrepreneurs mindsets, you need the intermediaries. But of course, finance is a very important component of that, enabling access to finance, encouraging investors to look into the social impact. And I know that many social entrepreneurs and of course, salary employed people have difficulties on seeing how to finance their business and their organizations. I've seen some good actions from impact investors in trying to deal with the short-term crisis and trying to adapt to the context. What's less than clear is what may happen in the medium term and how what type of adjustments we will see in terms of financing and the social economy, and that will be a very interesting area. Will we see more demanding investors that will require make higher requirement to social entrepreneurs? Will we see an increasing interest in impact investing, given the broader conscious of having to build back better? So for me, that's a thing. It will be a critical point to move forward and to support social entrepreneurship. And I think it's welcome that some of our organizations are trying to work, increasingly work with private sector organizations and impact investors. And Savi, you mentioned this from UNDP. At UNESCAP, we've put a number of impact funds and supported innovation funds to encourage entrepreneurship that has an impact on women or social impact. And I think for us, international organizations, being able to collaborate more with the private sector will be crucial to build back better. So with this, I would like to close this really great exchange.
Marta, can I make a quick?
Yeah, sure.
Comment before you close, Marta? No, I think the point you just made about access to finance is critical, and I think even at the United Nations Multi-Donor Fund, also talks about engaging and involving the private sector, and trying to unleash resources from the private sector, to treat with, the COVID and the impact of COVID, recognizing that no matter what sort of government interventions that you have, you also need to find a way to bring in the resources through innovative financing, to bring in the resources of the private sector, okay, to treat and respond to COVID in many different areas. The second call, for example, was just what you said about women, and, you know, coming up with programs and projects and innovative ideas to treat with support for women and women-led business, including those in agriculture and other services. So I think it's a very critical point, the issue of unleashing the resources and getting access, you know, to financing. Very, very important.
So thanks, Kelvin, for backing up that point of the importance of putting the wallets in the right place. With this, I would like to close now and to stick to the planned time, and to thank all the participants first and foremost for joining here virtually. I know it's not always easy to attend so many webinars and online discussions, and for sharing your insights and engaging in this dialogue and sharing your difficulties so honestly. So thank you very much. And I would also like to thank all our 4 panelists, Savi, Len, Kelvin, and Shivani, for getting up so early, for joining and for summarizing in a nutshell the efforts that these international organizations make. So thank you very much. I hope you all keep safe, you and your families and your communities. And I look forward to see the interactions and partnerships coming up from these discussions. Thank you very much.